Greetings. Can everyone hear me out there? Hello, Los Angeles. Can you hear me okay? Can someone please say yes or no? Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, brand new set of headphones with a new speaker. So I'm sorry that I haven't been able to do an update, a live update like this for some time, and that's because we were traveling in England and went to some conferences, went to Glastonbury, went to Glastonbury Tor and Glastonbury Abbey and Stonehenge. We got private access actually to Stonehenge thanks to Maria Wheatley, who's a local expert. And so on average, 4,000 people visit Stonehenge per day, and only 40 people are allowed inside. So we were literally inches away from the giant stones of Stonehenge, and that was quite incredible. It was my fourth visit to Stonehenge. The first time was when I was 16, and there was no fence around Stonehenge whatsoever. And since then, they've been making it more and more difficult to be able to see. The fencing gets farther and farther and farther away from the central stones themselves. And now I think it's something like you have to look at stone from somewhere like a quarter of a mile away. So that was a very special situation for me. No, I don't think Stonehenge was built with high tech, but it's nothing like the megalithic sites in Peru or Egypt or other places where you see obvious machining technology, but they were moved from quite a distance. They're originally, according to, yes, I do live in Peru. I'm actually in Paracas, Peru right now. But originally, according to Maria Wheatley, there were two complete circles of stones. The outer circle are called the Sarsen Stones, and they're from Marlborough, which is actually not that far away, but they weigh in the nature of 20 to 25 tons, so they're not exactly small. And then the so-called blue stones, which were the inner ring, could have been moved from as far as northern Wales. And so that's hundreds of miles. And again, the stones aren't massive as compared to some other locations, but still in a relatively damp environment, the fact that they were moved at all is quite incredible. And once again, according to Maria Wheatley, Reading, I was just there. On our way from North Yorkshire to Glastonbury, we went through Reading. So yeah, the surfaces of the stones, according to Maria Wheatley, were originally highly polished at Stonehenge. They certainly don't look like that now. And the big stones are getting covered in moss, which is something that should be cleaned off, but the local authorities insist that the moss is part of the environment. The stones themselves appear to be quartzite, as in very high in quartz crystal, which makes sense in terms of resonance or energy, vibratory movement, etc. So it was amazing to be able to be inside the Stonehenge circles themselves, and literally we could get within an inch, but then if you try to get closer, then the guards would yell at you. But no, Stonehenge is a great location. I have a much greater appreciation for it now than I did before. Again, it's not on the sense of scale as in some other locations, but it was a major feat of movement of massive stones to get to that location. Also, according to Maria Wheatley, the people called the Beaker culture moved in about 2500 BC, and they eliminated the original inhabitants who had built Stonehenge, according to her. If you don't know, there are ancient sites called barrows in England, not wheelbarrow, but barrows, as in mounds. And the round barrows, inside those, you find people with normal-looking heads, but in the so-called long barrows, like West Kennet Long Barrow, elongated skull people who were quite a bit taller were found. Now, a lot of the actual specimens are hidden away because, unfortunately, Stonehenge is located in a major military base, so access to a lot of the locations is prohibited, they're still doing a lot of live fire, as in they're shooting bullets off of machine guns and blowing up bombs and stuff in Stonehenge. And so unfortunately, Stonehenge is becoming more and more restricted as you go. But Glastonbury is a beautiful, relatively small town. My most recent video on my YouTube channel is about Glastonbury Tor, which has the remnants of a church, which supposedly was struck by lightning, and the previous incarnation was another church that was struck by lightning. The history of Glastonbury goes back to at least the time of King Arthur, and probably much, much farther back than that. For England, it's a very warm climate, so obviously that would be a great place for someone like King Arthur to have set up Camelot, quite possibly. And yeah, when we were in North Yorkshire, it was raining and depressing, and by the time we got down to Glastonbury, the weather was really nice, very lush environment, and that's where I was filmed for 10 lectures that you can see on Zohar Stargate TV on YouTube. I put a link up there somewhere about a few that that were put up recently. No, I don't think elephants helped in moving the stones, but anyway. No, it's true that it's strange that all the elongated skull people have disappeared. The Paracas people, which of course are probably the most famous ones. Example, here's of course is a copy, a resin copy of a Paracas skull. This is a small one. This is likely a female about 10 years old who died, and you see the lack of a suture line here. There's supposed to be a suture there. All Homo sapiens sapiens have that suture. It's not there whatsoever, especially in a 9 or 10-year-old girl. And these two holes in the back of the skull, which are supposed to be the same as these that we find. These are normal for human beings, these ones, but these ones are mainly around people with elongated skulls. Again, this is a resin copy, but it's a perfect copy. See the large eye sockets. Unfortunately, the jaw's missing. But the Paracas people were wiped out by the Nazca people. So the famous Nazca lines were made partially by the Nazca, but 500 years before the Nazca even existed, then the Paracas were making them. So before I open it up to actual questions here, I've had a number of people, no, it's not plastic, it's resin. But you see the skin, the color of the bone and everything, very heavy, but it's an exact replica. But a number of people have had questions about what kind of camera equipment I'm using now for my YouTube videos, because as you've noticed, the technical quality has gone up. And so I want to show you the latest incarnation of that. And that is this device. This is a Dji Osmo. The camera is up here. Of course, it's a gimbal device. So when you release it like that, that's what allows it to be able to have that beautiful flow. And then also this is a great attachment. You see it moves up and down. So I just experimented with it walking up and down stairs, and it reduces the look and sensation of going up and down a staircase. So this is the latest incarnation. Sound is improved greatly by this relatively windproof mic. And then, of course, the iPhone as the monitor. So this is what I'll be using in my future videos. I'm going into the high jungle of Peru next week to a site called, or to where the ancient culture called the Chachapoya used to live. And there's a massive ancient fortress called Cuelap located about between 9 and 10,000 feet in altitude that I'm going to be exploring with an American film crew. They're doing a documentary about the mysterious Chachapoya people who were conquered by the Inca and then unfortunately died out because of introduced disease from the Spanish when they arrived. And the other new toy that I'm going to be using, of course, those of you who are subscribers to my YouTube channel have noticed I haven't been able to utilize very much in terms of quadcopter footage. It's because of restrictions going on. And my original Pachacutec quadcopter is like that big. So it's really obvious. And so the latest version of quadcopter, which this is my one for internationally. I've got the Mavic Pro, which is a small quadcopter I'm going to use in Peru. But then this is the one that I'm going to be using at Chachapoyas and also in the highlands of Peru for our tour in October. And then in November, we're going back to be on tour with a guy named Nassim Hariman, that some of you may have heard of. And in Mexico and also Egypt. I'm going to try to smuggle this into Egypt. You see, it's quite tiny. And it folds out. So this is the new one. It films in 4K. Resolution at 100 megapixels per second, that it's easy to not only transport, but also it's not easy to fly it because it doesn't look like a commercial quadcopter whatsoever. But that's the latest super toy. And the company didn't give me this, I bought it. So that's the latest. And now, it's about 800, I think 800 US dollars. So for the quality of what it's going to produce, that's I think, relatively reasonable price. Okay, so let's, I'll open it up now to you if you have any questions for me. What do you know about the alien findings in Peru? It turns out that they are fake. So that's been proven now by a number of doctors and other medical experts and radiologists, etc. Very elaborate fabrications, but they're not authentic. They were made up of different human and animal parts, and so that's why I haven't been talking much about them, because I didn't think that they were okay, so next question. No, I don't believe in the stone softening theory. There's a theory that there's a plant from the Amazon that produces some kind of acid that can melt stone or melt the surface of stone, and it would require millions of or thousands of gallons to be able to do the polygonal work in Peru. So we're more looking at a very advanced technology beyond what we have to make the polygonal works, and it would likely be some kind of machine that can actually alter the molecular nature of stone for a temporary period. As wild as that sounds. No, I don't think they use diamond tools. It's beyond that. Again, it's technology beyond what we have. In Egypt, it could be diamond technology, but in Peru, it's beyond. It's something that would be theoretical in terms of technology to us. We're talking very, very advanced civilization. No, Doug, the Atacama Mummy is completely different, because the Atacama Mummy came from Chile. So the Atacama Desert is in Chile. The northern extension of the Atacama Desert is Peru, in Peru. So that's a completely different phenomenon, and I still don't know what to make of that. I don't think it's a human being. I don't think it's fake, but I haven't seen it in person. But it would appear that that's like a real specimen of something fascinating. Well, Sarah, I think we have I think we have regressed a lot. I think we don't use a lot of the mental skills that our ancestors had. We're relying way too much on technology now. Some people even use their computers to record their memories in order to be able to have a place to store facts and figures because they can't keep them in their heads anymore. So I think technology can be very useful, but it can be very dangerous if it's overused. Yeah, I agree, Ashley. I'm going to do a lot more so-called drone footage in the future, but that's why I've needed a much smaller thing to use, something that's easy to carry, easy to take into a place, doesn't look like. The important thing is you can't bring in equipment that looks commercial because that means that you have to get a license, which can take months and cost a lot of money. So hopefully with this little quadcopter, I'll be able to utilize it in places. It always takes a while for the guards in ancient sites to understand the latest level of technology. So hopefully they won't understand that that is not a toy, but it's actually a very powerful little quadcopter. Yeah, we do provide a list of gear needed for each tour. It's pretty basic, depends on where you want to go. If you want to go to Egypt, then in general, you bring layers of light clothing because it tends to be relatively warm. We go in either March or April, which are the best months to be in Egypt because it's not too hot and it doesn't get too cold at night. So just layering and possibility of rain's almost zero. Whereas in Peru, again, it's layering. And if you come, say, for the November tour of 2019, because the October tour of this year was sold out several months ago, then you would want to bring like a light rain gear and light sweaters and good footwear, stuff like that. Are you, Boone Kang, are you really in Crimea? Because we're going to Crimea in September of next year. We're going to do a tour of Turkey, which you can see on my website, hiddenincatours.com. Of course, we're going to Göbekli Tepe and Cappadocia and many locations in Turkey. And then right after that, we're going to fly to Crimea to look at the very large elongated skulls that are located there. They seem to be almost exactly the same looking as the ones in Paracas, Peru, and the DNA seems to be very similar. Also, if you stay tuned either on Facebook or on YouTube as well, or my website, Hidden Inca Tours, we should get the latest DNA results coming from 2 Paracas skulls that were very recently tested. I've already paid the bill to the laboratory in Canada, so I'm just waiting for them to send me the actual results, and that should be, I think, definitely next week. So that'll be interesting, and I'll add that to the database of great Boone. Well, about the Nephilim, of course, there is the possibility, since Baalbek in Lebanon is very close to Mount Hermon, where according to the Bible, the Nephilim descended, that Baalbek could be related to the so-called Nephilim. But other sites around the world, like Peru, no. How would the Nephilim get to Peru? Unless I don't think there's a connection there. Next week, because I was told by the lab that as soon as we paid the bill, which was 2 or 3 days ago, that the lab would email me the results, and I will read the whole thing out to in a YouTube video, or maybe not the whole thing, but I'll definitely let everyone know who's interested the DNA results. Of course, the people who finance the DNA testing get the whole like the whole statistic sent to them because they financed it, but I'll do my best. Well, Bushcracker, you can get a copy of the skull or one of these, and there are like 4 models you can get at Mount Blanco Museum in Crosbyton, Texas. So just go on search engine and look up Mount Blanco Museum, and Joe Taylor is the one who makes the exact copies like this. Do I have an email for fans? Sure. Brien at hiddenincatours.com. So I'll put it here. This is my contact email. Yeah, past history, the tool marks at Baalbek are very similar to those at the Great Pyramid and other areas around the Giza Plateau, and also at Petra and Little Petra in Jordan. It's like almost like a scraping machine going like that, doing the cutting. Very, very similar looking technology. Could be the exact same technology in all those locations. Do I think the Peru government are hiding certain artifacts? Maybe some, but not as much as in other countries. I think Egypt is hiding a lot more. I think US museums are hiding a lot more. Peru's relatively open as regards their history. A lot of stuff is accessible. So that's a great reason to live in Peru. There's a lot of stuff to explore. Well, Larry, electric shock, no, but at Pumapunku, there in Bolivia, there are magnetic anomalies. You may have seen that on my latest YouTube videos. We're going back to Pumapunku in a couple of weeks, and so I'm going to be doing more magnetic anomaly testing there, and hopefully be able to fly the little quadcopter. What's that in the hand of the Ponce monolith? It could be actually a glass of or cup of chicha beer. I don't think it's a like ancient alien technology thing. Those sculptures were done by the Tiwanaku culture between 1,000 and 2,000 years ago. So I don't think there's anything all that about them. If I could visit any site that is currently blocked by government, which would that be? Yes, that is a location in Egypt. It's near the Giza Plateau. It's in between Saqqara and the Giza Plateau. And it's called Zawiyet El Aryan. And it's in the middle of a military base. And it looks like a deconstructed pyramid. There's a major cutout in the bedrock that goes down, looks like hundreds of feet. And so that's only open for less than 2 years, and that is amazing. That's clearly lost ancient high technology. The fact that they've actually opened it up for those who want to get the sign the release form to go in is great, and I'm hoping that more sites in ancient Egypt will open up. The Richat Formation, I'd love to visit that, but it's in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, I've watched a few videos recently about that. It's very intriguing. It does have the same dimensions as Atlantis, and it could be because of tectonic raising up, that originally it was closer to sea level some 12,000 years ago. So yeah, Bright Insight is an excellent YouTube channel if you run by Jimmy. If you're not a subscriber to Bright Insight, then I would definitely do so. He takes a lot of time to put his videos together. The only okay, why is it that only the remains of the civilization is the stone? It could be because of the ancient series of cataclysmic events that I've been discussing before. It's quite possible that, according to some researchers like Robert Schoch, that plasma from the sun struck certain parts of the Earth, and so that would be incredibly intense heat. One place to look up is called Tanis in Egypt. Of course, I have videos about Tanis, and the Earth looks like it's been scorched, that all the nutrients in the soil have been vaporized, and the surface of the stone is burnt off or melted. So that's a candidate for that. And so if that happened in these locations, that would vaporize any organic life. So any people or plants would be vaporized, and it would be unlikely that anything could grow there for possibly thousands of years afterwards. Larry, good question. I should have bought some dowsing rods when I was in England recently. That was really dumb of me. But maybe we can fabricate something there. Or it could be, we have 23 people coming with us to Pumapunku. One of them could very well be a dowser, but I'll work on that. If China revealed giant human beings in their pyramids, well, the Chinese have been covering up the red-haired mummies that they found. They used to be on display in a museum, and clearly they're not Chinese, or at least not what we think of as Chinese people. They appear very much to be Caucasians who were in China in the distant past. Maybe they came as trading people, but yeah, the Chinese government, I think, has hidden them away from the general public. But it's kind of too late because there are already photographs and some video of them. So the key thing in the present and in the future, live, and then by the time the authorities find out about it, it'll be too late because it'll already be all over the planet. Gunung Padang, someday. You know, a lot of these places someday. I find Gunung Padang kind of interesting, but not fascinating enough to fly almost halfway around the world. But we are going to India in January of 2020, so there's a possibility that we may do Gunung Padang, or I might go with Patricia Awian and a group of people in 2021 to Laos and Indonesia, and then we might be able to go to Gunung Padang at that time. The Hypogeum in Malta, yep. Again, probably in 2020, we're definitely going to Malta. We'll do Malta and also ancient Greece. Well, it's a good question about the stone from Pumapunku. The anomalies are not, it's not just that the stone is magnetic, it's that the magnetic varies depending upon where you place the magnetometer. So the quarries themselves are 50 miles away, and we haven't been able to make it to them yet, but we're hoping to at some point. There is a road that goes to the quarry, but it's just we have to keep driving past it each time we're in the area. Flat Earth, no. The pillowing of the blocks. Well, the standard idea from archaeologists is that these knobs or protrusions on the blocks that you find in different places, mainly Peru, but also in at the Menkaure Pyramid in Egypt and in India and different locations. So that's how the stones were lifted up. They would put energy would be put into the stone, and that's what would cause the stone to suddenly, for a very short period of time, be turned into like a marshmallow consistency. So he thinks that the stones were lined up in a row, and then these electrode type things were put on to the knobs, and then the energy went into the stone, caused it to soften temporarily and sink into place. That's his theory. Mud fossils, I don't know. We're going to go back and explore that again when we go to Tanis in a couple of years. How do they build Machu Picchu? Well, 10% of Machu Picchu was made prior to the time of the Inca, and then the rest was built by the Inca. It probably took hundreds of years to construct. Yeah, I think the knobs are evidence of very advanced technology. The Gandenbrink shaft, well, unfortunately, Mr. Gandenbrink was kicked out of Egypt, and he hasn't been allowed to go back. So they haven't been allowed to put a little robot into, like the Upa water or other one, into the Great Pyramid. I don't think since his time, which is kind of sad. So, any other questions? Well, kicked out because he was discovering things that the officials didn't want discovered. That's unfortunately what happened in the past. You'd have to go through this whole process of paperwork and getting licenses and this and that and whatever to do stuff. And that's why it's a lot more fun to do stuff now with the present level of technology, where you can take something like a cell phone into ancient locations and turn on your Wi-Fi signal and be able to record stuff, transmit it live. That's very different from back in the day of Gandenbrink. Coral Castle, oh, we were going to go there a couple of weeks ago. He clearly understood how to neutralize gravity because he was a very small man. And he was able to move, I think, blocks as big as 40 tons, but he did it in secret, and that's the unfortunate thing. No, I don't believe in melting the stones with some kind of bags. That's like that. That's again that concept, or the concept of grinding the stone up and making concrete. I mean, that's a very advanced technological process, and there's no evidence of there being bags in the polygonal walls. So it's something. Again, you have to step out of the box and look at something more advanced than that. Yeah, I think the Younger Dryas was that's the period of time when the floods occurred. As regards to the Bosnian pyramids, I haven't been. So I can't have an opinion about a place I haven't been. Some people say, yes, they're authentic. Some people say, no, they're mountains. But I won't know unless I actually go someday. I've been invited. I just haven't been able to make it. But yeah, I'd like to visit the Bosnian pyramids at some point in time. Yeah, the megafauna died out at the same time as the cataclysm, January or February. So we'll check that out. Well, Marcus, I think it's possible that the elongated skull people had psychic ability. Some of their skull volume was greater than what is normal. So either they were more intelligent, they had greater motor or sensory skills, or they were possibly more psychic than we are. Well, in terms of the ancient cataclysm, I think it was a number of different events. I think there was eruption of energy from galactic center, which may have captured comets or asteroids and pulled them across the galactic plane and into the solar system. And then the energy going through the sun could have pushed plasma and caused the rapid melting of part of the North Pole. And that increased the oceans of the world by more than 300 feet very rapidly. That would create a lot of pressure onto the crust of the Earth, and that would turn on ancient dormant volcanoes, and all sorts of events like that would happen. Good megalithic sites in Belize? No, I've been there a few times. Zanantilic is okay, but it's the best site to go to. If you're going to Belize, go to Tikal. It's just over the border in Guala. Tikal is mind-blowing. But Belize, nah, It has Mayan sites, but they're not very impressive. They actually bulldozed one, I think, a few years ago. Yes, I have looked into the electric universe theory, and I will have to look. I'll have to look in have areas I'd love to see. Iraq is a basket case at this point, but Iran, I'd love to visit. We might visit within the next couple of years. Yeah, I think the cataclysm and the Great Flood are the same event. Problems with the drone. The only problem I had with a drone, with a quadcopter at a site was one of the Olmec sites, and it's an artificial mound that some people call a pyramid, but it's an artificial mound that was created likely by the Olmec, and there's a major magnetic anomaly inside of it. And so when I flew the drone over the mound, I lost signal for about 20 seconds, and then the same thing when I finally got the signal back and started to pull it back. Then when it went over top of the mound, the signal disappeared, but luckily it kept coming my way. So that was the only scary moment I've ever had so far flying. Oh, there are new photos of how Coral Castle was built. That's interesting. Planet X? No, not really. No, I'm not that into things that I can't concretely see. So the concept of Planet X or Nibiru or whatever, it's not part of what I study. Yeah, the ancient people could have had diamond tip tools, or they could have had tools that are even more complex than that, harder materials than what occur naturally on Earth. Lights in the sky? Yes. Around here in Paracas, we've seen lights maneuvering in a very coherent, intelligent way that were not satellites or aircraft that we know of. We've had a few sightings so far here in Paracas of lights of some kind that have been controlled by some kind of intelligence. That's a good point, ancient history criticisms. We're probably going to be going to Jerusalem the year after next in order to because there is at least one 500-ton block in a tunnel under Temple Mount. So I want to check that out and see what other evidence of pre-Israelite construction is there. Very kind of you, Don. No, I think the giant walls in Peru were not built to as a result of preventing landslides. I think they were prevented from keeping people out. The stopping of building by the Inca, yeah, that was obviously ended around 1532 to 1535 when the Spanish conquistadors entered Cusco and took over. That was the end of the Inca civilization. But luckily, a lot of their knowledge still exists to this day. No, I've never been to the mounds in southeastern America or any of the mounds actually, and best place to visit in the UK was, well, Stonehenge was great, and Glastonbury Tor was great. That's all we basically got to see. But both of those are classic sites. We also went to West Kennet Long Barrow, which was good to see, and Silbury Hill, which was good to see. Yeah, some of us have ancient genealogy. As the result of the testing of the recent Paracas skulls, I've had my own DNA tested. mainly in order to make sure that I haven't contaminated the samples, but I'll get to see what my own DNA turns out to be, which will be quite interesting. Library of Alexandria in Eastern or South America? I don't think so. Aerated concrete, again, I don't believe too much in the geopolymer theory. It could be that the material in between the stones in the core of the Great Pyramid, a geopolymer used as a filler, but the stones themselves were cut blocks from the Giza Plateau. Atlantis was in Mauritania? I don't know. Again, Bright Insight, he's got 2 or 3 videos up about a recent theory of where the city of Atlantis is located. You should have a look at that. It's really quite interesting. Well, you should just have a look at it and then make up your mind. But it is interesting that it has the same dimensions as what Plato said. Well, Larry, yeah, we will try to see if the magnetometer works at Amaro Muro, which is near Lake Titicaca. It's a red sandstone, so we'll see if it reacts, or if there is any reading from the magnetometer. At Pumapunku and Tiwanaku, there were no readings from the red sandstone, only from the gray andesite. The remains of an ancient culture that lived in Japan prior to the time of the present-day Japanese. And yeah, but most definitely. No, I doubt if there were Sumerians in Pumapunku. I think we're talking something far more complex than that. I have no idea if there's a crystal pyramid in the Atlantic Ocean close to Cuba. Again, I really only discuss places that I've actually visited, and so I don't like speculating about places I've never been to. Nothing today will last as long as ancient structures. Good question. I think everything now is built to last maybe 100 years. Well, Vince, good question about Rapa Nui, which is Easter Island. Work suddenly seemed to have stopped in the quarry on Easter Island, like suddenly, and there were huge ones. The largest one is still there, weighs something like 200 tons. So I don't think that was the result of the arrival of the Europeans and the introduction of disease. I think the work stopped as the result of the ancient cataclysm at all these sites. I think the work stopped at Baalbek because of the ancient cataclysm. I think damage to some of the structures in Egypt as a result of the cataclysm. I think damage to structures in the highlands of Peru and Bolivia as a result of the cataclysm. No, they're not digging the streets up in Cusco anymore, Shermanator, because it interferes with the traffic too much. So hopefully they'll find sites outside of the core of Cusco that they can excavate. No, I'm not fluent in Spanish, actually. I'm still learning. Yeah, the cataclysm would have reset us. It would have wiped out a lot of civilization. It would have wiped out a lot of knowledge. And that's why we had to rebuild from scratch. There is a museum in Paracas called the Senior Juan Navarro Museum that you can visit. I honestly don't think they'll do much in terms of excavations at Pumapunku, simply because the evidence there is inconvenient to what the ground. That's how they're trying to hide it. But of course, I've been able to film it. Marquez, yes, I'm going to Göbekli Tepe in September of next year. Mark, yes, the Kaimanawa Wall, I have been there, and there are recent videos that have been put up showing that it could very well be an artificial structure and not natural. So I'm getting emails about it, or have been in the last couple of weeks. Yes, I think there are important ancient sites under the ocean, but less than 300 feet deep. So southern India, in the Mediterranean and other locations, I'm sure there are ancient, probably megalithic structures even, that we can't see right now because of the rise of sea level by more than 300 feet. I think the fill for Göbekli Tepe came from the local area. I'm sorry, I don't know what magnetoreception means. Yes, I think all these sites in general coincide with the same ancient cataclysm of 12,000 years ago. Yes, Dave, I will be taking my new little quadcopter to locations all over the planet. And then I have my Mavic Pro, which will only be used in Peru. So it's a little bit bigger, a little more cumbersome, but this little tiny one. Thank you, Demonation. And thank you for that. I do try to have a logical approach to the ancient technology and sites, rather than being speculating too much. Did they have paper before the cataclysm? No, I think they were way more advanced than that. Again, I think we have regressed a lot. Some of our technology is phenomenal, but some of our social skills are pretty bad. Thank you, Shermanator. Very kind of you. I do not think Darwinism is correct. I studied Darwinism for 4 years, and there's so many gaps in it. There's no actual evidence of subspecies developing into another one. It could be that all different forms of humanoid existed at different times, and we were really good at wiping them out. Our digital libraries can be wiped out very easily with a magnetic pulse. What dig sites do I find the most interesting? There are too many to mention. The one I like to go to the most often is Pumapunku because it's relatively close. But starting in 2020, we'll be going to Egypt twice a year, once in March and once in October or November. Because our tour for next year of Egypt is already sold out, then starting in 2020, we'll be going twice a year. And hopefully more ancient sites will open up, like the Osiris Shaft has opened up. The neck of the giraffe? No, I haven't read that. Is Egypt safe? Yes, Egypt is safer than the United States of America. I'll tell you that much. I was just in the U.S. and I feel safer in Egypt than I did being in the cities. We went through Philadelphia, which is like gross. Also Newark, New Jersey, which is like run down and kind of awful. And so Egypt is safer than a lot of places in the United States now, and to some degree Europe. So it's becoming safer and safer every year. The president is very strong on security, and he's very strong on taking care of the welfare of the tourists. And tourism has gone up about 4-fold or 5-fold in the last 2 years in Egypt. Well, sorry, Vladius, but I think rural New Jersey is nice, but some of the cities, woof. Are aliens influencing the development of our civilization? It's possible. No, I don't think they're going to be building a highway across Lake Titicaca. That would cost billions of dollars. It's more than 20 wide. Yes, yes, Tina, metallic artifacts have been found at Pumapunku and Tiwanaku, and they're located in the museum on site. But, you know, there are a few gold ornaments and a few silver ones, and then some bronze things, but very crude objects. Well, Unite Planet, the best places for wheelchair users. Well, central Cusco is easy to get around, and they do have wheelchair ramps at Siwaman and Ollantaytambo. And actually, Egypt is pretty easy to get around if you're in a wheelchair. About the Nazca bodies, well, once again, they've been shown to likely be fake, unfortunately. The Paracas skulls are real. These are real. These were a subspecies of human being, but the alien-looking ones have been shown to be fabrications, which is too bad, but that's the way it goes. Yeah, I think the pyramids in Egypt were energy facilities, not necessarily power plants. The unusual magnetic anomalies so far. Zechariah Sitchin, I've never been able to finish one of his books. I think I've read maximum about 8 pages, and then I can't get into his work. Well, we're going to the Black Sea in September of next year, so that's where we're going to explore ancient megalithic locations there, and also the elongated skulls there, and of course I'll be filming. No, I don't think the Great Pyramid was a water pump, but it was an energetic facility. So again, we're going back in April to see what else we can learn. Always learn something. Robert Schoch to Cusco. I don't know. We had Robert Schoch in Peru about 6 or 7 years ago. His focus is more on Egypt, but he may come back at some point in time. I'll be seeing him at Contact in the Desert in June. So any of you who would like to meet me, a great place, Contact in the Desert at Indian Wells, California in June of 2019. It's on my website, or just look up Contact in the Desert. And Robert Schoch will be there, and a lot of the famous researchers you know of will be there. It's a 3-day conference at a spectacular resort outside, far enough outside of Los Angeles to make it nice, and it's great. I haven't been in contact with Graham Hancock for quite a while, quite a number of years. Tina, yes, we have experienced unexplained aerial phenomena here in Paracas. Paracas and Nazca are real hotbeds of, shall we say, unusual aerial activity. Lee, good question. I think Pumapunku is the finest work. You know, there are places that have greater scale, like the Great Pyramid, etc. But in terms of technical prowess, for me, Pumapunku is the finest. I don't know about the Stegosaurus at Angkor Wat, maybe, but again, I haven't been there. So it's like, if you see a picture, it's one thing. If you go to a location, you'll learn sometimes 100 times as much. And there's so much information in these ancient locations, but it's going there physically where you learn stuff much more than looking at a picture or somebody else's video. Yeah, Pisac is also very impressive. Well, to discuss an ancient nuclear destruction, you'd have to have a Geiger counter, which I don't have. That at Ollantaytambo in Peru, about 10 times normal, but that could just be the fact that it's granite, which naturally, supposedly emits radiation. Yes, I think the Younger Dryas and the and the ancient cataclysm were basically at the same time and are related. Ah, very kind of you, Jimmy. Unfortunately, having books in color is incredibly expensive compared to black and white. But the ebooks, of course, are all in color. But the paperbacks, getting them done in color is very prohibitive. Yes, Ryan. I think the pyramids in Egypt were energetic facilities, and that the quartz content is a key component of that. The stones of Pumapunku are flat on all sides. That's correct. Yeah, somebody buy me a Geiger counter. Maybe you can get one through Amazon and send it to me. Okay, another minute and a half, and then I have to go. I'm going to the high jungle of Peru next week for 4 days, filming a documentary. And then after that, we have a tour here in Nazca and Paracas and Cusco and Machu Picchu and Pumapunku and Tiwanaku and Lake Titicaca that I'll be filming. Nazca, or in November, we return. February, we're going to Mexico to film out-of-place artifacts. And in April, we're going to Egypt again, and also Lebanon and Jordan. And then June, we have Contact in the Desert. Please look that up, contactinthedesert.com. Giants in Hollow Earth, I don't know. I believe there were ancient tall people, but not necessarily giants. I think 8 foot tall person is feasible. Hollow Earth, I haven't been inside the Hollow Earth, so I don't know. No, I don't think the Inca, or what we call the Inca sites and the Egyptian sites, are connected. I think they were done by different ancient advanced cultures. My pleasure, Panda Bear. Okay, time's up. It's been 1 hour. No, I never got to meet John Anthony West. I would have loved to. He's the one. I think I've met them all now, but I never got to meet him. Very, very intelligent man, but I never got the chance, unfortunately. And I never got to be on the Art Bell Show. And if you would like to see me on the Joe Rogan podcast, please contact him or contact people who work with him and ask him to have me on his show, because I think it would be lots of fun. Thank you all for being part of this live discussion. Yes, I have a Facebook page. Please join it. And if you're not a subscriber to my YouTube channel, please join it, because we're very close to 200,000 subscribers. And that would make my day if we were able to get to that point within the next week or so. And thankfully, more than 50 million views of my video so far. But again, just to show you, this is the technology that I'll be using coming up. It's a hyper-stabilized camera. So I haven't used it for my YouTube videos yet, but this is what you'll be seeing. So 4K, high definition, major stabilization, great microphone with sound or windproofing, and also my new quadcopter that I will attempt to use as much as possible, because I really miss it. So thank you so much to all of you for watching, and I'll try to get on again right after our October tour, and I'll be doing live stuff as well, hopefully in the high jungle if there's a signal, and then of course in Nazca and Paracas and Cusco and Machu Picchu, etc. So blessings to you all, and thank you so much for your support and interest.